afternoon, Singapore. It's me again, Lim Tean, after work, and it's been another very hectic day in the lead up to nomination day. As I was telling you yesterday, you know, there are so many bureaucratic forms to fill up in order to be a candidate. It's incredible. So today is the deadline to file the political donations form. It is the deadline to file for the minority certificates and all that. And the deadline is a mere 3 days after the dissolution of Parliament. Can you believe that? And so, really, the campaign period is over 2 weekends or 1 weekend because nomination day is Tuesday next week. And I want to highlight something that happened last evening when three of our People's Voice members and volunteers went on a community outreach in Pasir Ris, Pongo, GRC. You know what happened? They were stopped by the Transcom police and detained for 2 hours in a sort of a small office, literally the pantry, I was told. And at the end of it, no charges, nothing were pressed against them. One of the members called me up during the saga and requested me to speak with the police officer. So I did. And I asked him, I said, police officer, what's the problem here? And he said, oh, one of your members is holding up pictures of another political party. Yes, he was. I have a very enthusiastic member by the name of Ivan who was carrying with him a montage of various pictures of PAP MPs sleeping in Parliament. And I asked the police officer, I said, is that a crime? Is that an offense? It's not defamatory, unless they want to suggest it is defamatory. I said, on what basis are you stopping my members from going on a community outreach? So at the end of 2 hours, they were all released. No complaints, nothing. But my friends, this is the sort of harassment that opposition members find themselves under all the time. And of course, I think about a week ago, we had that incident where various PSP members were basically stopped by so-called social distancing ambassadors, including a Straits Times reporter who was following them, and questioned. All right. They were told that they were breaching social distancing rules. But at the end of the day, again, no charges were pressed, nothing. And you compare that to what happened right at the outset of the circuit breaker, or I call it the lockdown, when despite clear rules being put in place that people were not allowed to go out of their house unless there was a permissible requirement, you had PAP MPs going around under the guise of advising hawkers, stall holders to wear masks, but literally doing outreach in clear, flagrant violation of the rules and regulations. Did anything happen to them? Despite the huge public outcry, nothing. And my friends, that unfortunately is the society we have become, where our law enforcement appear never to dare to act against the establishment, but against the opposition, they are very liberal. And why is that? That has become prevalent because we have a lopsided parliament where the ruling party has become too powerful, all-encompassing, all-embracingly. And so law enforcement are afraid. Other agencies are afraid. And that is not what a first world nation should be. It should not be this way. And that is why I am asking you in this election to think of what a proper first world nation should look like. It should be one where no one is above the law. That is the whole basis of what is known as the rule of law. You are neither up or you are neither below the law. And in order to do that, we must first redress the great imbalance in Parliament by making sure that many more opposition members are in Parliament. And this is not some fancy Western notion of democracy. Unfortunately, it is human nature that when one party becomes all too powerful, people's freedoms are sacrificed. You may not think of this as a freedom issue, but it is at the end of the day, my friends, a freedom issue. People complain about CPF. Oh, why is it that they changed the rules and now I can't withdraw my CPF at 55 as they originally promised? It is because through decades of voting, we have made one party too powerful, and they feel at liberty to change the rules and regulations at their whim and fancy. And I often tell people, CPF is a freedom issue, because if you do not have enough to live on to retire, it affects the way you are able to live life. You are not able to live life the way you want to. And when people complain that despite the huge amounts that they have to put into MediSave, why is it when they go to hospitals, they still have to top up with cash? My friends, I think it was last year or the year before, I think it was last year, Leong Zi-hian, our party member, gave me the incredible facts. We have $96.1 billion locked up in MediSave. Now, don't tell me when that amount of money is locked up, supposedly for healthcare in Singapore, we are not able to provide universal healthcare for all Singaporeans. Why is it that from time to time, and with increasing frequency, we read of elderly people having to go through hospitalization and the horrors of getting a bill after saying, oh, your bill is $14,000 and your MediSave will only pay for a very small portion of that. That is a freedom issue. And everyone must realize that. It affects the way you live. You are able to live. Another freedom issue. Why is it that our university fees are so expensive? Parents are having to use their CPF now, in many cases, to help their children get through tertiary studies. Yes, on this matter, Ong Yi Kang pofmat me because I said that over $250 million are spent on the education of foreign students every year. Now, I don't want that amount to be spent on foreign students. I want that amount to be spent on local students. And I know so many Singapore students are denied places in local universities and have to go abroad, and their parents have to spend huge amounts in order to ensure that they get a degree at the end of the day. And worse still, after getting that degree and coming back to Singapore, they are not even assured of a job. So it is a huge outlay for an uncertain return at the end. I want those monies spent on Singapore students. Do you know that Ong Yi Kang said in Parliament that the 250 or 260 million or thereabouts is half what the government was spending on foreign students years ago. So we were spending $500 million on foreign students every year. And that has been halved. Do you think that is fair to that Singapore parent who has contributed his whole life to the building of our nation? He is in fact contributing to the education of that foreign student. And if he still has to spend money to send his children overseas to be educated, how should that parent feel? And again, we come back to this whole notion of citizenship. And what are your citizenship rights? And that is why, in People's Voice, we say that for a first world nation like Singapore, we must move towards eventual universal healthcare and universal education. Because People's Voice wants to make sure that every Singaporean talent is developed to the fullest. We are not going to allow even one drop of Singapore talent be wasted. And you know what the PAPIB's answer to that would be? Oh, you're going to bankrupt the country. We have no natural resources. And this is the song they have been singing for 5 decades now. Always bringing back to the fact that we have no resources. Do you know that countries which actually have resources are actually the countries at the end of the day who do the worst? It is what they call the resource curse. And in this new age, the knowledge age, the best resource you have are your people. It is the human resource. And that is why our age is called the knowledge age. And I always say, it is a criminal waste of talent that we have so many talented people in Singapore, very educated, very qualified, but who are doing jobs well below their qualifications. And yet, we have foreigners doing those jobs that Singaporeans are well qualified to do. And you know, it is documented, many of those foreigners come in with fake degrees, with fake qualifications. And Singaporeans are law-abiding. You never get a Singaporean that goes through a degree mill, that goes to the computer to generate, a fictitious university degree. But yet, our people are losing out to these others who come in with fake degrees. Yeah. We must put a stop to that. And that comes back to what I said in my very first live stream a couple of days ago. We cannot allow to have HR managers in any company in Singapore who are foreigners. We will not stand for that. Why should we? A HR manager's job is well within the skill set of a Singaporean. And we are not going to allow any Singaporean to be discriminated against in any job. Another aspect of where an overwhelming majority in Parliament has been detrimental to the interests of Singapore. The ridiculous law known as POFMA, which makes the ministers the arbiters of truth. Can you realize how ridiculous that is, my friends? In a court of law, we entrust justice to a judge who is supposed to be impartial. And of course, in a court of law, you have two sides battling it out. I should know, I'm a litigation lawyer and I'm in court most days. And we respect the judge because he is an impartial figure. You look at POFMA. Most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, the POFMA law has been used against opposition figures like myself. It is because we criticize the government. We criticize their policies. The ministers don't like it, they slap a POFMA on you. And your post then is supposed to carry this corrective notice saying that this post contains false material. Yes, it is false according to them. Yeah. And then they give you the crazy idea, well, if you're not happy, you can go to the judge. Well, I don't bother. Yeah. I don't bother. Because I want Singaporeans, and I know Singaporeans can see how ridiculous this whole notion is. And I want Singaporeans to judge how ludicrous this law is at the ballot box. I was POFMA'd for a post about Ho Ching's salary. All right? Which the Taiwanese media reported. And I was just repeating what the Taiwanese media reported. And I got POFMA'd by Mr. New Texas Heng. And to show you how ridiculous that was, in Parliament, Lawrence Wong had told Parliament that the government took no interest, or the government does not inquire into the details of the remuneration of the top executives of Temasek. He said that at the end of the day, the government evaluates the performance of Temasek based on its results, its returns minus the costs. So the impression given was the ministers don't really bother about how much the top executives, including Ho Ching, are paid. And yet, me and three others were POFMA'd by Heng Swee Keat based on a statement issued by Temasek, saying that what the Taiwanese media reported was false in the first place. Why is this even a public interest matter? Since they say Temasek is a private exempt company. All right. It is so ridiculous that our sovereign wealth fund, or one of them, Temasek, now enjoys a private company status, a private exempt company status. Yeah. No other country in the world has such a setup where public money is belonging to the taxpayers of Singapore and supposedly invested for the interest of the people and the country are in the hands of a private exempt company. And Ho Ching's salary is secret. No one knows. If you query it or you even make reference to foreign reports about what she earns, you can get POFMAT. And then the finance minister steps in. So by stepping in, to me, he is suggesting that there is a public interest element involved, because POFMA says that you should not issue a POFMA notice unless there is a public interest involved. So again, my friends, I know many of you are indignant, angry about the fact that Ho Ching's salary is not revealed. And I say again, this is a freedom issue, because in any other country, her salary will have to be revealed. You look at the Norwegian Wealth Fund, a fund that has close to $1 trillion American under management, and last year had a fantastic 19.9% return. It earned $181 billion US, almost $34,000 US per Norwegian citizen. Everyone knows how much the CEO of the Norwegian Wealth Fund earns. He earns only slightly in excess of 1 million Singapore dollars. And we are talking about the CEO that is about to step down, or I think has just stepped down. I am given to understand that his successor, a very renowned and successful investment manager who's based in London and has been based there for the last 26 years, is going to earn even less than what the current or ex-CEO earned. And you know, in the Norwegian Wealth Fund, every Norwegian citizen has access to how much that fund invests in every company in the world. And investment decisions are even debated in Parliament. Yes, that is the sort of transparency that the Norwegians expect. It is the sort of transparency that a first world nation expects. In Singapore, how much do we know of what GIC, Temasek, does with public money? It is so scanty. And GIC now does not even report on yearly returns. The situation is so ridiculous now. It has a 20-year average return. And which was what I said in my video when I was first POFMAT over the Ho Ching salary. I said, would you place money with a fund manager that does not tell you how his fund performed last year, but tells you, oh, over a 20-year period, this is what my fund returns? How do you know his fund has not been losing money for the last 5 years? All right? So, my friends, I want you to think about this. What the implications of an overpowering parliament is. It affects your freedom. And I do not mean freedom in a very woolly Western theoretical concept. I mean real freedom, how it affects your life every day. And then you will realize why it is so important to elect people who dare to speak up, who dare to speak up. You have many MPs in Parliament today who literally are useless, who are sleeping on the job, who hardly ask any questions. You shouldn't have those type of MPs. You deserve better than that. And I hope in this election, we are going to effect real change. Because if we want to be a truly first world nation, we need a truly first world parliament and a truly first world democracy. Thank you very much. And I hope I'm going to get lots of questions today. Yeah. Thank you. What incident? Oh, someone has asked me whether we can take legal action against what happened against our members, which happened last night. Yes, I believe we can. Because I do not think that the police have the right to detain anyone without good reasons. That is what in law is known as wrongful detention, unlawful detention. And what were they able to establish at the end of the day? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It wasted our time. It prevented us from doing outreach the whole night, especially when elections are near. Is this what we are going to see from now on until voting happens on the 10th of July? Opposition members being harassed? Campaigning is already going to be so restricted. There are no physical rallies allowed. Even house-to-house visits are going to be very minimal because of the social distancing rules. And on top of that, you have the police harassing you. Yes, of course, I think there are grounds to take legal action against the police. But, we have better things to do. It is a very short campaign period, and every minute counts. Not forgetting that we are also bogged down with this crazy paperwork that has to be submitted on nomination day. Tell me, my friends, in the 21st century, why is it necessary for someone who wants to be a candidate to have 6 to 8 assentors or how many seconders? And then you have to go around asking every resident, oh, will you be my assentor? Will you be my seconder? That is crazy, right? That is absolutely crazy. That is a set of rules that belonged 200 years ago. Maybe because, different rules applied then. All right? But why in the 21st century are we still having such archaic rules? Thank you for that question. And I would invite many more questions, please. Miss Cho, Gaff Cho has made some very interesting comments about MPs sleeping in Parliament. And I agree with you absolutely, Garth. You know, I think it is disgraceful if MPs sleep in Parliament. You know, let me say this. Our Parliament is already a very inactive Parliament. If you go to the UK House of Commons, when Parliament is in session, they sit almost every day. All right? The Prime Minister has to come to Parliament every Wednesday for Prime Minister's question time. He has to answer questions for between 30 to 45 minutes from the opposition, from all members. You don't see that. Most of the time when I watch our Parliament, I don't see the spontaneity. And when I read the papers, I realize most questions are submitted in advance. Yeah, I never see, or I hardly see members standing up and being able to question the ministers. Everything is prepared well in advance. And sometimes the minister doesn't even reply himself. He gets someone else to reply. To me, that is a big joke. It is a big joke. All right? And Parliament shouldn't be this way. You must have ministers if Parliament is really accountable to the people, being able to answer questions on their feet, being able to handle unexpected questions. Not like Heng Swee Keat, when confronted by the opposition about a minor point, he spends many minutes shuffling his papers, and then he asks for a recess. And that shows you we have a bunch of MPs and ministers who can't think on their feet. Yeah? And let me ask you, do you want these type of people to be your representatives? People who are not confident, people who really do not know their stuff, people who cannot think on their feet, people who cannot answer questions? I think you want better MPs than that. I hope I've answered your question, Garth. Thank you. I have a question here from another viewer who asked me when is People's Voice going to unveil their candidates. I can assure you that we will unveil our candidates before nomination day. We have a fantastic lineup of candidates. And I want to say this about our candidates. From the time I started my party, I was very clear with my vision and with the vision of the other founding members. We do not want a party that is representative of the privileged or the elite. I am not, and my members are not, after candidates with impressive academic credentials who are scholars. All our candidates are well qualified. Most Singaporeans are well qualified. People's Voice will always be that party that seeks to represent the fabric of our society. If you are a common person with the right heart and the ability to represent the people in your community, we want you. My friends, before 1900, the British Parliament consisted of two major parties. The Conservatives, or in those days, they preferred to call themselves the Tories, and the Liberal Party, who some people would use the old term, the Whigs. And these parties were made up of the landed gentry, well-to-do people. But of course, as time passed, there was the working class. And that was why in 1900, there was this guy who started the Labour Party. His name was Keir Hardie. And he was a working class guy, coal miner. And so the Labour Party in Britain was started in 1900 to represent the working class, or what they might call the peasants in those days, because everyone in society deserves representation. And people's voice will always stand for the interests of the middle class and the working class. We will always be for the middle class and those who aspire to the middle class. And Singapore is largely a middle class society. But in recent decades, we have seen how the interests of the middle class have been sacrificed, how the interests of the middle class have deteriorated, how their wages have stagnated, but yet the living costs have gone up. We want to be the voice of that common Singaporean. I hope I've answered you on that as well. A few more questions. Simon makes a very good comment. The CPIB must be a standalone division. Simon, you are absolutely 100% correct. It is shocking. It is shocking that in this country, the CPIB, the elections department, are under the purview of the Prime Minister's office. That cannot be. That cannot be. In law, we have a saying that not only justice must be done, but the appearance of justice must be protected. How can the CPIB and the elections department be under the purview of the Prime Minister's office? For people's voice, it is no use just talking about accountability and transparency. The situation in our country has been skewed so much that we believe for there to be real accountability and transparency, there must be a major redrawing of our constitution, such that institutions such as the CPIB, the electoral department, the elections department, even things like the budget office, the statistics office, must be totally independent. And that is what you have in the UK, for example, where the budget office is totally independent. And that is what you have in the United States, where the Office of Budgets is totally independent. You may claim that there is no government interference, but any time an agency or an institution is under the purview of, say, the Prime Minister's office, the perception will be that it is not independent. So the perception of independence, the perception of justice, is as important as the doing of justice. Simon, I thank you for pointing that out. Thank you. And finally, I am going to end with a comment by Heng Tai, who agrees with me that opposition MPs must speak up for Singaporeans in Parliament. Heng Tai, I cannot agree with you more. I sometimes think that many Singaporeans do not understand the role of the opposition. Yes, many people will say, well, don't call yourself opposition, call yourself proposition or whatever. I like to stick with the term opposition. I make no apology for that. In a Westminster model, which I'm very familiar with because it is the same model we follow in a court of law. In a Westminster model, you have the ruling government and you have the opposition. And the two should clash, because out of this clash, there comes a solution for the people and for the voters. And that is the model you follow in a court of law. You have two sides that clash. If I am the lawyer for my client, I'm not supposed to help the other side. No, we have a judge who decides on the merits of the case. And in a Westminster parliamentary model, who is the judge? It is the people. And so the best solution comes out of a clash of ideas, of a clash of approaches. So I have no time. I have no time for those arguments that say that the opposition must help the government. I have no time for that. I'm sorry. To me, that opposition, the opposition's duty, and it is a dereliction of the opposition's duty if they do not hold the government of the day to account. And I will always remember that fundamental duty of the opposition, which is to hold the government of the day to account. It is not my duty to help the government unless it is in a time of war. Yes, then we must stand united as a people. And many people said, well, in the COVID saga recently, oh, we must stand with the government. I say, no, you are wrong. Because if the government is handling the saga badly, is handling the crisis badly, it is the duty of the opposition to hold the government to account. And for those who have followed social media and who have followed People's Voice, you will realize People's Voice was the only opposition party that held the government to account. And we were right, were we not, my friends? From the time we started in early February suggesting that the government was going the wrong route, we were proven right on the 3rd of April, when Lee Hsien Loong came before us and basically did a U-turn. Basically told Singaporeans they had to do everything which People's Voice had said we must do in early February. We wasted 2.5 months. If we had done the things People's Voice said we had to do in early February, we would have been out of this mess by the end of February. Our economy would have reopened. It would have been a short and abrupt standstill. And yet, now, we are 5 months down the road. Our economy is still struggling. We are not clear. The PAP tries to tell you that the situation is under control. It is not. We are still having triple-digit cases every day. And we have not even really tested widely the community at large. And how do we know how many cases are there if we do so? And so it is the height of irresponsibility, when despite the unstable situation, they have called for these general elections. But we are not going to let their incompetence in handling this saga go. Mr. Shanmugam told the public the other day that he wanted these elections to be about COVID and about jobs. Well, we are happy to oblige, Mr. Shanmugam. We are happy to take you on as far as COVID and jobs are concerned, because these are the very issues people's voice want to talk about. My friends, I hope this has been informative. I hope you have enjoyed it. I thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you again on Monday when I shall resume my Lim Tean after work. This weekend, on Sunday, I'm going to be doing another living room rally. And we will post an ad on our Facebook to inform people where we are going to be holding this living room rally. And my friends, I am going to make an appeal to you. You know, the campaign period is about to kick off very shortly. Like all other parties, People's Voice needs your support, both in terms of manpower, hours, and also in terms of donations. We need your donations more than ever now to run a very serious campaign so that come the 11th of July, we can have a first world parliament. I hope you will donate generously to People's Voice. Thank you very much and have a great weekend.